Good morning, YouTube, and welcome back to the channel. I am Jeremiah, you already know that. And this is the Chattahoochee River. This is my most favorite place to fish freshwater of all time. I've been coming here, well, fishing different parts of the river my entire life. This section in particular since I was about, let's say 5-6 years old. Today I'm going to show you some really sick multi-species action. As long as you know what to use and where to put it, you can go almost anywhere in the country and catch several different types of fish, even if you're in the same spot. So I'm going to catch some catfish, probably some bass. We may or may not see some stripers and hybrids. There's going to be some carp. It's going to be a pretty sick video. Watch this. There's fish number one. Nice little hybrid. Actually, I think that's a white bass. Yeah, that's a cool little white bass. First fish of the day. That fish was caught on a lipless crankbait. The Lucky Craft LV500. This is the new live threadfin shad color, I believe. White bass and hybrids are schooling. Early in the morning, they'll come through on school and bust on top. And what I'm doing is I'm looking for busting fish, but if I don't see them, I'll throw into current breaks with something that sinks fast and will stay down, like this bait. It's the size of a 1/2 ounce, but it weighs 3/4. I'll throw this bait, let it sink, and I'll fish it through that area until I catch one. And you can normally make repeated casts to the same spot and keep catching fish. Make a long cast into the slack water, let it get down. Then I do the yo-yo retrieve. I just lift up until I can feel it vibrate, and then I stop and let it fall back down. After it makes bottom contact again, I'll lift it up again. That's all I'm doing. Then when I feel like I got out of the strike zone, I just reel it in and cast again. There's one. He got it while it was falling. He got it while it was sinking. Fish on. That's a good fish too. That's a better size one there. That's a better size one. That's a better size fish. He's not rip and drag though. I don't know what he is. But he feels heavy. That was a catfish. What the hell? What a freaking catfish on the lippers. This ain't exactly what I had in mind when I brought catfish bait, but I'll take them. Yo, look at that. As soon as that bait made contact with the bottom, I lifted up, I felt weight, and there was a catfish. He actually got that bait pretty good, didn't he? He's kind of skinny. I'm gonna toss him back in. He's a small catfish, but catfish are definitely aggressive enough to eat bass lures, especially in places where they're plentiful. Don't be surprised if you catch catfish on bass lures. I've caught cats on trickworms, chatterbaits, lipless crankbaits, topwater, believe it or not. Catch them on jigs. Catfish will actually get a lot of bass lures. Seeing more turtles than fish right now, but that's okay. That's okay. There's another fish. A little striper. Baby striper. Okay, that's 2 species down. Well, actually 3. We got a white bass, a striper, and a channel cat. There we go. Throw it out into the slack water, let it get down. The other thing about spots like this is that the corral shad up against the dam and up against rocks and things in the river. On current breaks, they'll pin them up against stuff where they can't move. So throwing alongside the wall and alongside rocks can really help you out with locating fish in rivers, especially during the spring and during the fall. And also during the shad spawn. During the shad spawn, late spring, early summer. The reason why I'm not moving is because I'm letting it sink. And you know it's done sinking when the line goes slack. When the line is moving out towards you, it's either on its way to the bottom. When there's a bow in your line and you see it moving forward, that means it's sinking. When the line goes slack completely, it's on the bottom. You can also feel the bait make contact with the bottom most of the time. There's one. Good one. That's a good one. That's a better sized fish. That's definitely a better one. Or not. Maybe it's just the current, man. It's a white bass. A pretty big white bass. Ugh. That's a good one. Another nice white bass on the LV. There's another one. They were schooling and then they quit. Took a while. But I got another one. That's actually one of the bigger white bass I got today. He smoked that swim bait. The swim bait is putting in work just like the LV 500 was. This thing was brand new when I took it out the package. It's been tore up now. I'm throwing out close to that eddy, right on the edge of it. Letting it drift back some with a swim bait. Let it get down a couple of feet and just barely turning the handle. And these stripers and white bass are slamming into it. And they're not big fish, but they're powerful fish. Even a little striper or a small hybrid will give you a pretty good fight. Oh, I just got bit. I just got bit and missed one. All right, guys, it's time for a gear check. I'm going to show you what I was using, why. I'm going to give you a couple of tips and things you can use to maximize your time on the water. The first rod and reel combo I was using, this is a Megabass Levante. This is a 7'4" Enforcer series. The reel that I'm using is a Daiwa Regal. This is a 3,000 size reel. You don't need anything too big and too heavy to fish in a situation like this. As long as there's not ripping current everywhere, you can still get away with some finessier, lighter, and some medium type of spinning and bait casting tackle. But I prefer to use a spinning rod when I'm using smaller things, like this little swim bait. Of which, this is the Dirty Jigs Guppy Head. No, they don't come out the package this ugly. This one's been beaten to death all day. The plastic trailer that I've got is a Z-Man Diesel Minnow. Super stretchy, super durable. The color is a Tackle Warehouse exclusive, I believe. Don't hold me to it. But the color is called Slam Shady. This is by Salt Strong, the guys over at the Salt Strong channel. They designed it for saltwater fishing, but it works in saltwater and freshwater. You don't really have to worry about it. It's mostly kind of a ghosty kind of looking color with a whole lot of silver flake in it. So a really good bait fish imitation. and it'll work in any type of water clarity, so long as it's not too dirty, I don't think. Even if visibility is a little bit limited, what I chose was a chartreuse and white jig head, even though it's been beaten almost all the paint off of it. I chose a chartreuse and white jig head because it'd be easier for the fish to see. And in combination with this body, it really helps them to be able to locate it in the water. Also, the way that I was fishing this bait was I was throwing up, quartering upstream. When I'm fishing in a situation in a river or anywhere where there's current, I normally cast up in front of my target and let it drift back into it naturally. And that goes whether it's in a stream, a river, a creek, the ocean, and the surf. I throw up in front of my target, quartering upstream, or up ahead of whatever hole or whatever target that I'm trying to get at. I throw ahead of the target and let the current itself bring my bait naturally into the strike zone. If you throw directly into it, by the time that you, by the time the bait hits the water and you reel up the slack, it's already left the strike zone because the currents grabbed it and pushed and carried it away. Also, it gets time to sink when you throw up ahead of it. So, bait like this is only a 1/4 ounce head. I'll throw upstream and it would get a couple of seconds of sinking time before it got into the strike zone, and I slowly retrieved it back out. I was just doing a slow roll, barely turning the handle. That's what's nice about this plastic also. In addition to being stretchy and pliable, softer plastics have a much better action at slower speeds than stiffer plastics. If you're going to use injection molded bait instead of this ElaZtech bait, you'll have to work a lot harder to actually get full action out of the bait. Whereas with this, I can pretty much just hold it in the current and it gets full action the entire time, so I don't have to do much. The specific areas that I was targeting were things like eddies and current breaks, big rocks, boulders, things like that that break the current. Those fish will sit behind those types of areas and they'll rush out and grab things and then get back into the spot where they're comfortable, where they don't have to fight against the current the whole time. So target areas for something like this would be undercut banks, boulders, eddies, riffles, things like that. And one of the best parts, best areas that I was throwing this at was a funnel. And what that is where you have big rocks on one side, on either side, and water rushing through the middle. It creates a natural funnel where bait fish are forced to swim through. So I would throw up ahead of it, let it go through that funnel and slowly retrieve through there, and those fish would hit it. Another thing about quartering upstream though, before I move on to the next bait. The fish are in a situation with this current, they're facing into it. So let's say the water is coming, well actually let's use the swim bait as an example. Let's say the current's coming this way. The fish are sitting this way. They're facing into the current. Their bodies are streamlined. It's designed for the water to come up and over their backs. It looks a whole lot more natural that way versus you casting and coming across that fish or coming from behind them. It's not a natural presentation to do that, and you actually increase bites by throwing further upstream and bringing it back down because that's where they're looking anyway. The other rod that did most of the damage was this one. Now this rod has since been discontinued. This is the Duckett Terex. This is a 7/6 cranking stick. And this is the Shimano Scorpion DC reel from Japan. This is the 2017 version. It has since been replaced by a new version. I believe it's the 2021. I do believe that this version is superior to the other one though. This new one that they came out with is a 150 size reel, whereas this one is a 100 size reel. And the new one is basically a Japanese version of the Curado. I mean, the Scorpion series in general is basically just a Japanese version of the Curado. But this one is superior as far as performance, as far as I've seen between the two of them. The baits that I was using are lipless crankbaits. In particular, I was using the Lucky Craft LV500 in two colors. The first color was gold threadfin shad. The second color was American shad. And I started out with the gold threadfin earlier in the morning because the sun was a little bit lower. It's a more opaque kind of lure. They can see it better, especially with that slightly stained water. So I was throwing that early in the morning. Then as the sun came up and more light started to come out, they could see there was a little bit more visibility in the water. So I swapped over from that to a American shad, which is really flashy and has a lot of scales and stuff on it. It's mostly chrome with a kind of purple back, and there's some blue and stuff in it. It's really crazy looking. It's got a whole lot of flash. So I went with that. Again, for the same reason, it's visibility. Most of the fish that I'm trying to target, whether it be bass, stripers, white bass, hybrids, whatever, they're mostly sight feeders. I have to be able to see it to eat it most of the time. So that loud rattle and flashing and that vibration really triggered the bites. Now I threw it on a 7.6 because I can get long casts with it, and I'm using 12-pound monofilament. A lot of guys prefer fluorocarbon for crankbait fishing. I actually prefer fluorocarbon for crankbait fishing as well myself, but it depends on the situation. If I'm fishing up in super shallow water, a heavy monofilament is easier because it keeps the bait up. But if you wanted to get it down, I would go to a lighter fluorocarbon, 10-pound test, 12-pound test fluorocarbon. If I had some money on the line in a tournament, I would probably have a spare spool with both, to be honest with you, depending on where the fish happen to be at that day. But for river fishing purposes that you see in the video, I would actually recommend fluorocarbon for this. I got monofilament on, but fluorocarbon would be the ideal. All right, and the last one. What you see me catching catfish on is actually my second swim bait stick. This is an Abu Garcia Veritas Toro. This is a new rod. Just came out recently. This is an 8-foot heavy fast. The reel that I've got on it is an Abu Garcia Ambassador. One of the nice things about swim bait rods, if you're considering getting a swim bait rod, or you think you have to have separate rods for catfish and for swim baits, and for every other technique and every other fish under the sun, you could do it that way, but a lot of these rods actually double and even triple as doing multiple other things. Certain swim bait rods that have a certain taper to them, as long as they got a little bit of tip to them, and they're not, you know, just a straight up broomstick, you can use them for other things. So this rod actually does well with bottom fishing for catfish. I can use it in salt water and catch redfish. I can use it surf fishing, pier fishing, jetty fishing, stuff like that. It actually worked well for all of those situations as well. So you don't have to have a swim bait rod and just use it for swim baits. They will double and triple for other things, so long as the guides and the hardware used to make the rod is saltwater grade, or if you just give it a good rinse after so that it doesn't rust, because salt water is corrosive. You can normally get away with using this type of stuff in many different situations. Now, the rig that I've got, the rig that I was using is a sliding sinker. I got a sliding bank sinker at 4 ounces. I got a plastic bead, 8mm bead. I got a 100-pound test barrel swivel. I've tied a Palomar knot to both ends. I've got about a foot of leader, and then about a size 3 circle hook. Some guys like to use a longer leader. I actually recommend to use a shorter one than the one that I have on. The reason why is because you can get an increase in casting distance. The saltwater guys that live up north and fish chunks for bluefish and stripers, and a couple of the guys that fish saltwater for redfish, they figured this out a long time ago. They're out there with their 10-foot, 12-foot surf rods and things like that, and they're throwing chunk baits and other things like that, similar in the way that you would for catfish. And using a shorter leader actually helps you out a lot. Because see, when you have a long leader and your weight's way up here and the hook is way back here with the bait on it, when you cast it, you're cutting down your casting distance. A lot of guys think that having a long leader actually increases strikes because the fish don't get a chance to see all the hardware. It's just the bait and a long fluorocarbon leader or whatever material leader it is that you're using. They feel like that's more natural to the fish. And sometimes that can work. But here's the thing. Catfish and stripers don't care. The majority of the time. Stripers feed a lot by sight, but you've got this big hunk of dead meat on the bottom they're coming to eat if you're using cut bait. They're not worried about all that. They just want the food. So you can get away with using a short leader. But when you cast a leader that's really long and your weight's way up here, it's helicoptering in the air, it's spinning and stuff, and it's twisting up your line, and it's also cutting down your casting distance. So the best thing to do is to tie a short leader. Those guys that are up north, and there's those guys that are up north chunking for stripers, and a lot of guys that are fishing for redfish, they're using 8-inch leaders. They're using like itty bitty short 2, 3, 4-inch leaders, no more than 8 inches long. That would mean for me, to have my leader only about that long, up to here. Now, the benefit of that is that instead of having that long leader swinging around and tangling your line, you have everything in one small package. Everything is tightly put together, and it casts a lot better. It increases distance, and it snags less. It doesn't snag as much, especially in a situation where you're fishing in current. Your sinker's down there on the bottom. This thing, and it's on a slip sinker rig, so the actual bait itself could be drifting downstream and just flailing around downriver somewhere, and it could get snagged back there somewhere. Whereas if you have everything tightly together in that one small package with the short leader, it's mostly all compact on the bottom in one spot. You can get it up and out of a snag if it does get hung up, and you can actually resist snags a little bit easier. So that's the bait check for today. Hope that helps you guys. Here's some night fishing footage. Seriously, it's a good night. Right? We got hybrids, we got carb, doubles and triples.